What's up, peeps? This is Todd and welcome back to my show. Today I would like to go over exactly why I never ever raise the rent on a tenant. If that sounds good, let's hop into the video. So before becoming a real estate investor, my wife and I had a very long conversation about what type of landlord we are going to be. Unfortunately, landlords today have a very bad reputation, and there's the slumlord, and they're greedy and they don't provide any value, all these things talking about landlords. Now I have to say, most of the landlords that I know are really good people. They care very deeply about their tenants and they're trying to provide safe, affordable housing. Of course, there are a few bad apples and there are some slumlords, but those are not the majority, and I don't like slumlords either, and I have no respect for anyone who's a slumlord. My wife and I made the decision to never raise the rent on an existing tenant. So basically, whether somebody rents a room from us for 6 months or 6 years, their rent will never increase. The only reason their rent would go up or down is if they decided to upgrade or downgrade rooms. For example, let's say they're renting a basic room from us and the price is $900 per month, and 9 months into their lease, a master bedroom comes available and they want to upgrade. At the time that I'm recording this video, master bedrooms go for $1,300 per month, so that tenant would then upgrade to that master bedroom and they would pay the $1,300 price. Similarly, if we had somebody in a master bedroom and at the end of their lease, they wanted to have a cheaper room, they could downgrade to any room that's available. They could go from paying $1,300 a month for a master down to $900 for a regular bedroom. And of course, just in case this video is confusing, I don't only have rooms for $900 and only have rooms for $1,300. I do have rooms ranging from $825 on the low end to $1,300 on the high end, and then I also have a couple studios and apartments that go for higher than that. But if I have a tenant that stays in the same room and they never move out, they never change rooms, their rent will never ever go up. And I do that for a few reasons. The first reason is when somebody makes a decision to move into one of my properties, or any property for that matter, a lot of the time what they're doing is they're looking at their budget and they're trying to figure out, okay, how much do I make? What are my monthly expenses, like my phone bill, my car payments, and all that stuff, and then trying to factor in what rent amount they can afford. They made a decision based on a specific price, and so I don't feel that I want to ever raise that price on them. Personally, I would get incredibly annoyed if Verizon, my phone company, called me up and say, hey, we're raising your phone bill, and nothing has changed about the phone, nothing's gotten better about my service, but the price for the same thing is going up for no reason. I would be really annoyed by that, even if it only went up by $5. So I can imagine that tenants find it incredibly annoying when landlords raise their rent by $50, $100, or even sometimes $300 for really no reason. Now, I understand that sometimes taxes can increase, like property taxes can go up, and so there are landlords that raise the rent to offset that increase. But me personally, I just keep the rent at the same rate, and then once that tenant moves out, that's when I rent that room for market price. Now, the second reason I never raise the rent on a tenant is I don't want to nickel and dime people so much that they get pissed off and they decide to move out. If I have a great tenant, I would much rather keep them in that room, even if I'm getting $50 or $100 under what I could be getting. Turning over a property can be stressful, and although I personally have never missed a month's or even a day's worth of rent because there's such high demand here in Seattle, I do know a lot of landlords who have tried to raise the rent, the tenant gets pissed off, they end up moving out, and then it takes that landlord 2, sometimes even 3 months to find a new tenant. So because they tried to raise the rent by $100, they might be missing on 3 months worth of rent, which is a couple $1,000s. Now, the third reason that I never raise the rent is I believe that if the landlord takes care of the tenant, then the tenants will take care of the house. Now, of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes there are just bad tenants, and other times there are just bad landlords. So this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. But the vast majority of the time, if I do the right thing and I keep my tenants happy and they enjoy living there, they're not going to trash my house, which is a really big deal because that can be expensive. You're going to have to go through evictions, and it could get really crazy. Now, being completely upfront and transparent, although I think that I'm fair, obviously, there are some tenants that get mad or upset about a few things, and I have had to evict / non-renew, I think 4 or 5 people over the last 4.5 years. But that's across 35 rooms that I rent out, and again, not all of that had to do with bad tenants. Sometimes they're just not a good fit for a rent by the room scenario, and of course, all of my properties, I house hack them. In my mind, part of taking care of your tenant is not raising the rent by 10% every time the contract renews. So my philosophy, take care of the tenant and they take care of the house, that means that I'm not going to be raising the rent rent on them. If they're happy living in my property, they're satisfied, and the property's good and the rent is the right price, there's no motivation for them to move out, and there's certainly no motivation for them to trash the house. Now, the final reason that I never never ever raise rent on a tenant is it's actually an incredible marketing strategy. When somebody answers my ad and we start talking about a room for rent, they ask, what my leases look like, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, or somewhere in between. The next question that's usually asked is how often I raise the rent. And they're absolutely delighted when I say never. Now, I'm very transparent in that if they upgrade rooms, that is when their rent would increase. Like if they go from a normal bedroom to a master, their rent certainly would increase. But if they just stay in the same room the entire time, they will never ever see a rent increase. They will never pay more than what we agreed upon on that very first lease. So with my marketing strategy, I can say, all of these houses I bought new construction. They all have really nice furniture. We have a house cleaner come through every single house once per week. We have pest control. I supply paper products and I pay for cable and internet. And also, your rent will never increase. I firmly believe that those facts and that marketing strategy is a big reason on why I've never missed a month's rent. And also, at the end of the day, as long as I'm able to cover all of my expenses and pay all of my bills, I would actually feel kind of gross trying to nickel and dime people for $50 or $100 here and there. No matter the situation I'm in, I try to always do the right thing. And of course, I'm human, so I'm not perfect, and I'm not ever going to claim to be even close to perfect, but I do my best to do the right thing every single time. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you, and I will see you guys at the next one. Peace.